At midnight, the old mountain tunnel forgets how long it is. On paper, it runs a few hundred meters between two sleepy junctions. In the dark, it unspools like a ribbon thrown into a well. The road paint fades to a thin ghost. The sodium lamps buzz to a sickly amber. And the radio dissolves into whispers that do not belong to any station. Drivers swear the air turns colder with every meter. The glass fogging from the inside as if something is breathing on it. If you check the dashboard clock, it will read 0 no matter how long you've been inside. If you glance in the rearview mirror, you might see seats that aren't there, high-backed and green. Crowded with silhouettes hunched shoulder to shoulder. Somewhere behind you a bell dings. The old bus kind, and a conductor mutters, "Move down," in a dialect you haven't heard since your grandparents' stories. You press the accelerator, the tunnel stretches. The exit remains a coin of night pinned too far ahead. And when tires thump over a seam in the concrete that repeats like a heartbeat, a woman clears her throat and asks, polite as a ticket inspector, "Have we reached the other side yet?" No one answers. The tunnel isn't finished with you. His name was Daniel Wong, a 40-year-old taxi driver who knew Hong Kong's streets like the back of his hand. Nights were his domain. While most of the city slept, Daniel ferried late shift workers, couples too tired to take the bus, and students clutching fast food bags. The quiet hum of the road suited him, less traffic, more space to think. But there was one route he avoided, the old mountain tunnel that connected Kowloon to the outlying districts. Officially, it had been decommissioned after a newer, brighter tunnel was built nearby. Still, GPS sometimes directed him through it, and drunks sometimes demanded the shortcut. Daniel always found an excuse to steer elsewhere. His father, also a driver, had warned him, never take the old tunnel at midnight. He said, voice low, cigarette trembling in his fingers. When pressed, he told Daniel about the bus accident, how, in the 1970s, a crowded coach lost control on a rainy night and slammed into the tunnel wall. Dozens died, trapped in flames and smoke. The tunnel reopened, but drivers whispered that some passengers never left. Daniel had laughed off the tale as a boy, but the memory lingered. Now, every time he passed the junction, he felt a shiver, as if headlights might sweep across faces pressed to the glass that no longer existed. It was on a humid August night, fares running thin, that he found himself idling near the old turnoff. His phone buzzed. A booking. Urgent. Destination beyond the mountain. The fastest route blinked blue on the screen, straight through the tunnel. Daniel hesitated, thumb hovering over the accept button. The meter was low, the job paid well, and he told himself, again, that stories were just stories. With a sigh, he accepted. Minutes later, his taxi nosed into the mouth of the tunnel. The clock read 11:59. By the time he reached the center, the dashboard would freeze on 0, and Daniel would realize why some roads should never be traveled after midnight. At first, the drive was uneventful. Daniel kept one hand steady on the wheel, the other tapping a rhythm on the gear stick. His headlights carved two pale cones into the concrete, catching damp patches on the walls. The tunnel smelled faintly of rust and oil, no different from countless others he had driven through. But as the taxi rolled deeper, he noticed the road markings beginning to blur. The solid white line in the center of the lane wavered, as if painted on water rather than asphalt. He blinked hard, rubbed his eyes, but when he looked again, the distortion remained. The radio crackled suddenly. He hadn't switched it on, but a low hum filled the cab. It wasn't music, nor traffic updates, just a murmur. Layered voices shifting like a crowd waiting to board. He reached to turn the dial. No matter the frequency, the voices followed. Then came the smell, acrid, heavy, burning rubber mixed with smoke. Daniel gagged, pulling at his collar. Memories of his father's story crawled to the surface. The bus crash, the flames. He checked his rearview mirror, half expecting to see smoke trailing from his engine. Instead, the mirror showed something else. Seats, not the leather backseat of his taxi, but rows of bus benches, high-backed and green, filled with shadowed figures. They sat motionless, shoulders pressed together, faces blurred in gloom, his breath seized. He whipped his head around. The backseat was empty, but in the mirror, the passengers remained. A faint bell chimed behind him, ding, the kind conductors used to signal stops. Daniel gripped the wheel tighter. The road seemed longer now. The tunnel's exit still a pinprick of darkness far ahead. He pressed the accelerator. The speedometer climbed, but the scenery didn't change. The same damp streaks, the same painted seams repeated endlessly. And then a woman's voice spoke, clear and close, though no one sat in the cab. "Excuse me," she said in Cantonese, polite, weary, "do we get off soon?" Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. He forced his eyes on the road, refusing to answer. His father's warning rang in his ears, never respond, never acknowledge them. But in the mirror, one of the shadows leaned forward, tilting her head as if waiting for his reply. Daniel gritted his teeth and pressed the accelerator. The tunnel should have ended minutes ago. Yet the exit remained a dim pinprick. No closer no matter how fast he drove. His hands sweated against the steering wheel. Behind him, the murmuring swelled, dozens of voices, layered and restless, like commuters waiting for a late bus. Some coughed, others muttered. A man's baritone rumbled with irritation. "We should have arrived by now." Another voice, higher, frightened. "Why won't the doors open?" Daniel flicked a glance at the rearview mirror. The figures were clearer now, faces pale and gray, eyes hollow, clothing charred in patches. They weren't just shadows anymore. They were passengers. His taxi was no longer a taxi. It had become a carriage in their endless ride. He gripped the mirror, angling it away, but the glass refused to move. Fixed like stone, the bell dinged again, ding ding, and this time it was impatient. Insistent. Daniel's heart thundered. The radio hissed louder. Between bursts of static, fragments of conversation bled through. Screams, metal screeching, the roar of fire devouring air. He slammed the radio off. But the sounds continued, seeping from the speakers like trapped breath. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw motion in the passenger seat. A figure sat there now. A woman in a singed cheongsam. Her hair matted with ash. She didn't look at him. Her head rested against the window, lips moving silently as if praying. Daniel's throat went dry. He whispered, "You're not real." The woman's head snapped toward him. Eyes blackened hollows. Her lips stretched into a smile too wide. "We are still waiting," she said. He swerved, tires screeching, but the tunnel walls pressed closer, narrowing as though the concrete itself wanted to crush him. The smell of smoke thickened, making his eyes water. He coughed, gasped for breath, but there was no escape, only the endless stretch of road, repeating like a nightmare loop. The passengers in the mirror rose as one, standing in the aisle of their phantom bus. Their voices united, chanting, "Let us off! Let us off! Let us off!" Daniel's ears rang with the sound. He slammed the steering wheel, shouting, "I can't, I'm not your driver." But the tunnel disagreed. The dashboard clock froze at 0. The wheel locked under his hands. And somewhere deep inside the roar of voices, one word rose clear, spoken in a child's trembling tone, "Stop." The car jolted violently, as if something massive had stepped into its path. Daniel's scream caught in his throat. The tunnel had chosen its destination, and he was no longer in control. The taxi shuddered to a halt, though Daniel hadn't touched the brakes. His chest heaved as he twisted the key in the ignition. Nothing. The dashboard lights flickered, then died, leaving him in dim, sickly tunnel glow. The air was thick with smoke, acrid and cloying. He dared a look in the mirror. The bus passengers filled every inch of the glass now, standing shoulder to shoulder. Their faces were scorched, some with skin peeling in ribbons, others blackened beyond recognition. Eyes glared at him, not with malice but with a weary, endless demand. "Let us out." Daniel swallowed hard. "I can't," he whispered. The woman in the cheongsam leaned closer, her reflection bleeding into the real passenger seat. Her burnt fingers tapped the dashboard in slow rhythm, ding, ding, like the conductor's bell. Her voice was steady, cracked like a broken reel. "We never left this tunnel. They said it was an accident." But we are still here. A memory struck him then, his father's hushed voice, telling him of the bus fire. But the detail he hadn't heard before slid like a knife into his thoughts. The exit doors jammed. The driver trapped with them. None surviving. The tunnel itself wasn't stretching endlessly. It wasn't a road anymore. It was a grave. Daniel pressed his palm against the wheel, his voice trembling. You want someone to carry you through." The passenger's chant faltered, replaced by a hiss of anticipation. The radio sputtered back to life. Not with static but with the frantic broadcast from decades ago. News of the accident. The confirmed deaths. The official closure. The announcer's voice shook with pity, then abruptly cut off. As if silenced, Daniel's blood ran cold. The tragedy had been buried. Papered over. No memorial, no rites. Just a sealed tunnel with voices trapped in the concrete. The woman's face was inches from his now. Her breath smelled of smoke and metal. "Drive us home," she whispered. Daniel's hands tightened on the wheel. He knew the truth. This wasn't about leaving passengers behind. It was about carrying them to the exit that had never arrived. If he failed, he would become one of them, another restless figure in the rearview, waiting for the next midnight driver. Daniel gripped the wheel with trembling hands. The taxi's engine was dead, but beneath him, the vehicle vibrated faintly, as if another machine pulsed through it, a ghost bus rising to claim its driver. The tunnel lights flickered, elongating shadows until the walls seemed to ripple with flame. The passengers loomed in the mirror, their chant reforming into a single, thunderous plea. "Drive us home." "I'm not your driver," Daniel screamed, twisting the ignition. Sparks jumped, the dashboard flickered, then died again, but the steering wheel turned stiffly on its own, the pedals sinking without his touch. His taxi had become their bus, their carriage. He was only the shell left to guide it. Smoke seeped in through the vents. Acrid and choking, Daniel coughed, his eyes burning. In the passenger seat, the woman in the cheongsam straightened, her body jerking as though pulled by unseen strings. Her head tilted toward him. "If you will not take us," she hissed, voice layered with dozens more, "then join us." The rear doors of the phantom bus slammed open in the mirror. Charred hands thrust forward, grasping at the air, stretching toward Daniel. He stomped on the accelerator instinctively. The car jolted forward, not on asphalt, but on a blackened, endless road lined with ash. He realized with horror that the tunnel had changed. Its smooth concrete walls were gone, replaced by scorched stones streaked with soot. The roof dripped with stalactites of melted metal. He wasn't in Hong Kong anymore. He was inside the fire that had never gone out. The mirror showed the passengers swaying, their mouths opening in silent screams, their eyes fixed on him, imploring, accusing. Daniel clenched his jaw, forcing the wheel straight. "If you want to leave," he muttered, voice raw, "then I'll take you out." He floored the accelerator. The speedometer climbed past limits, the tunnel whipping by in a blur. The chant rose higher, deafening, pressing into his skull. Figures leaned into the aisle, some reaching through the mirror as though the glass had thinned. Cold fingers brushed the back of his neck. The exit light appeared at last, a faint circle glowing far ahead. Relief surged, but terror followed. It was shrinking, pulling away no matter how fast he drove. He screamed, "Let me through." The woman's burned face appeared inches from his, eyes searing with grief. "You must carry us all," she whispered, "all of us, or none." The road buckled, flames roared. For a heartbeat, Daniel thought the taxi would burst into cinders. Then instinct overtook fear. He slammed both hands on the horn, a blast so loud it shook the car. The sound merged with the phantom bell of the bus, echoing like a signal through decades. The passengers froze, the tunnel rumbled, the exit light swelled, no longer receding but rushing toward them. Daniel gritted his teeth, pressing harder on the accelerator. The voices rose in a final scream, half anguish, half release, as the taxi burst through. Blinding night air filled the cab. The road stretched normally again. The dashboard clock ticked to 0:01. The mirror showed only his empty backseat. Daniel pulled over, chest heaving, sweat dripping into his eyes. The tunnel behind him lay dark, silent, ordinary, but deep in his bones. He knew it was not empty. Daniel sat slumped over the wheel, engine ticking faintly as it cooled. His hands shook so badly he had to grip his knees to still them. Behind him, the tunnel loomed like the throat of some sleeping beast, its mouth black against the mountain. Cars passed on the newer highway above, their lights bright and ordinary, oblivious to what churned in the dark below. He forced himself to check the rearview mirror. Just his own backseat, no shadows, no passengers, yet the faint smell of smoke lingered, clinging to his clothes, to his hair, to the upholstery. When he blinked, he thought he saw soot smeared across his hands. He didn't drive the rest of that night. He sat by the roadside until dawn, watching the sky bleed pale. When he finally returned home, he locked his cab and walked away as though it might still be full of ghosts. In the days that followed, Daniel avoided fares near the mountain. He grew quiet, distracted. His friends asked why he flinched whenever a bus horn sounded, why he never checked his mirrors anymore. He didn't answer. But sometimes, on nights when traffic thinned and the city's hum sank low, he would hear it again, a faint ding of a conductor's bell, echoing from nowhere, and in that instant, he knew the passengers were still waiting, forever circling the tunnel that had become their grave. The midnight tunnel had let him leave once, but Daniel felt, with growing certainty, that one night he would be called to drive again. Tunnels are supposed to connect places, not trap people. They promise passage, light at the other end, the certainty that every road leads somewhere. But the midnight tunnel betrayed that promise. It became a coffin stretched in concrete, a loop where the dead replay their last ride over and over. Desperate for release, Daniel realized that ghosts are not always the ones who died violently. Sometimes they are the forgotten, the ones whose tragedy was paved over by convenience. The passengers weren't seeking vengeance, they wanted recognition. To be seen, to be remembered, to arrive at the stop they never reached. That is why the tunnel stretches endlessly at midnight. It reflects not distance, but the weight of lives cut short, stories suspended between two exits that never connect. Every driver who enters after the hour strikes 12 risks becoming part of the timetable. A substitute conductor for a journey that refuses to end. So if you ever find yourself on a late-night drive and your GPS directs you toward an old mountain tunnel, pause. Ask yourself whether the few minutes saved are worth the voices you might hear. Because once the passengers know your name, once you hear the bell chime behind you, you're already on the ride, and the question will not be whether you can reach the exit, but whether you'll be allowed to leave at all.